Come to Waterfowl to try and test out a steadicam. A lot of people complaining that they were feeling nauseous after watching my videos, and I hope it was because of all the the camera shake rather than the content on my face, but we'll see if this works. It's a really cheap one, so I hope it does, but I don't think it will. I think Waterfowl has just had a fire, which is quite nice. You can see quite far. Haven't been here for a while. I certainly haven't been here when it's so clear. I think this might have been a controlled management fire, but it's not a big surprise that Typha, or these bulrushes, or reed mace as they call it in the UK, catch fire, because the tips are often used around the world for tinder. They catch an excellent spark and burn very, very well. But it's a useful survival plant in general. The underground storage in the rhizomes is edible and contains a lot of carbohydrates. You just dig down, pull them out, chuck them on the fire, and then peel away the hard outer layer. And it's delicious starch. Really, really useful plant. There's not much activity, but I do see some activity happening down there. What I see is a bunch of yellow-billed ducks, red-billed teal, and these big ones are spur-winged goose. Now they're called spur-winged goose because they've got large spurs, large spikes on the tips of their wings. Don't know if you can see that, they're a bit far away. They use them for fighting and defending themselves, which is quite cool. But these spur-winged geese are pretty cool. They're one of the few poisonous birds in the world. So they're not venomous. It's not the spurs that will inject venom. They're poisonous. There's a distinction there which annoys me quite a lot of the time, but I think it's quite an important distinction this time around. So they don't inject venom with the spurs. Certain places in West Africa, their meat becomes toxic because they eat grass that contains a lot of blister beetles hanging around on the grass that they eat, and they kind of sequester the toxins. I think it's cantharidin, something like that, which makes their meat toxic. This is always confusing. I was confused the last time. There's another tubercle gecko that looks very, very similar. It's the Turner's tubercle gecko, and it looks kind of the same. This looks like Biberon's thick-toed gecko, or tubercle gecko. What is it? Contradactylus biberonii. It used to be called Pachydactylus, but I think it's got its own genus now. There's another gecko that looks very, very similar to this, Turner's tubercle gecko, but it occurs further north in the country, and I think this one has slightly bigger scales on its head. It's a good way to identify them if you've got the two together. But the best way is this kind of distribution. Cool thing about geckos, this one's hunting quite well by the light, but geckos can see in the dark quite well. They've got color night vision, so we, in dim light, we can't see color. We basically see in monochrome, or black and white, because we use our rod cells in our eyes to pick up light in dim conditions, and the rods don't have the ability to differentiate colors. We use our cones to see colors in the day. And now, because geckos evolved from daytime lizards, they actually don't have rods, they only have cones. So they've had to modify their cones, which see color, to work well in very, very low light. So they can, as an offshoot, see in color at nighttime, which is cool. But it's a kind of a workaround because their day-living ancestors lost the need for rods. So they've had to remodify their cones to work at night, which is pretty cool. They also don't have an eyelid, so we can blink our eyes. So they've got their eyelids are basically fused together and become see-through, so that they can see through it. But that means they can't blink. That's why you see them often licking their eyeballs to get all the muck off them and to keep them, nice and clean. Some of them, like in the Namib, use their eye scales to kind of collect dew, and they sometimes get a drink from the dew that's collected on their eyes, which is quite cool. And this one, you can see those big tubercles, so those circles on its back. There's some species of gecko, the Pachydactylus, like Namaquensis, the Namakwa gecko. Instead of just losing its tail, if it's grabbed by a predator, it can actually slough off some of its skin. So, wherever you grab it, some of its skin will come off, and it's quite weird. But this guy, each one of those tubercles is actually highly connective tissue, so its skin's really quite tough. So if you grab it, its skin's not going to come off. I think this is a western spotted thick-toed gecko, Pachydactylus serval, I think it was called, but it was a subspecies. It was renamed 2005, made its own species, Pachydactylus persellii, I think. Other than genetic differences, you can also tell the two apart. The Pachydactylus serval is up in Namibia. You can tell it apart by its nostrils, apparently. But they live in these little rocky crevices, where the rocks are exfoliating. They hide in they're nocturnal. So in the day, I think I've just disturbed his sleep. But that paper in 2005 that did the phylogenetic revision, I think also showed that the Orange River might be a barrier to gene flow. There's a little cockroach